Welcome to Creators for Creators. I am Amber Kelly. I'm the Director of Community and Support for Autotroph. And today I get to chat with Spencer Magnusson and once and for all confirm the pronunciation of his last name.
Yep, Magnusson's correct. Yeah.
Creator of, it is correct, Magnusson?
Yeah, yep.
Nailed it. Spencer, you are the creator of NView, Proxy Plus, Find Duplicate Meshes, to name a few. And we've also worked with Spencer through the CG Cookie project on training future creators in scripting with his course Utility. I'm excited to get to know more about Spencer. And if you stick around toward the end, then we'll also get to hear from Spencer the products from other creators that he uses personally and would recommend. So thanks for joining us on Creators for Creators, and welcome Spencer Magnusson.
Woo! I don't know what it's supposed to do.
Nailed it.
Okay,
Nailed
thank you for the
it.
introduction. Thank you.
Why don't you start with telling us a little bit, like start at the beginning, your beginning of what brought you to Blender and how that little journey kicked off for you.
So I was born. No, I won't go there.
And then you deleted the default cube.
So the first time I used Blender was in probably around 15 years ago now. I mean, I was just a young teenager at this point. My initial interest was with making video games, and of course, that didn't really pan out for me. It was kind of that mentality like, I can make a full multiplayer game as a kid, and, of course, that doesn't happen. But along with downloading the game engine, I begged my parents to download Blender so I could make stuff for the game. And I was very off and on with Blender those first couple of years of it was the Blender 2.49 interface was what I first started with. For those that don't know, it's like worse than like Windows XP looking interface. It's just really awkward. So I was off and on with Blender for a long time. 2.5 had a little bit better UI, but then with Blender 2.6, that's when the visual effects features started coming in. And so it was kind of making visual effects on my own, kind of did some home videos, which I think are still discoverable online if you know where to look, and did that through college. So some of them I really hid, but I try to keep some of those around. Yeah, so in college I did animation and computer science was what I studied. I also helped on some of the college short films at the time and doing visual effects. I got to make some of it with Blender, and other times you had to use other software, and that's fine. But that's kind of the beginning on the Blender side of things. The creator side of it is kind of like the next steps after that, of what I got to with that. Because with Blender for a long time, I didn't really even know that it had a scripting component. It was like, with the newer versions, you see the tab and everything, but even though I did programming through all of college, I had no idea that was like a part that Blender wanted you to use. When working on the different short films, I was kind of like, oh, that'd be nice if that was a tool in Blender of, oh, that's a cool feature in that software. I wonder if that's available in Blender. And that kind of was when I started the process of like making add-ons and different tools within Blender. Right around that time was actually when I started at Blender Market, now Superhive. It was actually pretty early on to the add-on creation side that I joined Blender Market.
One of our first guinea pigs in our experiment to see how this market
Truly
plays.
a test subject, yeah.
Appreciate your bravery and you're still being around. That's amazing. What was the first add-on that you made or tool? Do you remember?
The first one I published on Blender Market was aspect ratio calculators. It was of basically given the render resolution, calculate the right resolution based on the aspect ratio. It could even add the little black bars for the compositor. So I published that, and it was literally, I think within hours of my publishing it, that I looked around and other people like, oh, that's in the photography add-on, which at the time was free, that already has an aspect ratio calculator. And I was like, dang it. So research is important. Make sure you check if the feature already exists somewhere else, especially for free. I lowered the cost of it pretty drastically, and it still got a decent amount of sales from that anyway, so it didn't seem like most people minded. And then my first real product, I'd say, was Shot Matcher after that, which basically given to video clips or images, we'll try to color grade them to match. And That was actually one that was endorsed by Sean Kennedy. That was my first contact with him. He actually vouched my add-on and gave me a quote that I could put on the product page. Great guy. Obviously has a VFX compositing related course on CG Cookie as well. I'll plug that. But yeah, so that was kind of like my big add-on that I was like actively maintaining for the long term. Those add-ons are both freely available now. They're no longer on Super.
How much do you think that affected the success of your product, having Sean vouch for it in that way?
I'm sure that did wonders. I'm still not someone that markets their own add-ons very well, to be honest. So I think just having that and finally putting a trailer on the product page, I think made a huge difference in my sales with that. I mean, that's the entire idea with affiliates as well, is that having that sponsored kind of referral is what brings people and gives you credibility.
Yeah. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's one of the goals of this series, too, is to take people like you who are very trusted in this space. Obviously, you've been here almost the entire time that Blender Market slash Superhive has been. And then hearing kind of those recommendations from you, but we'll get to that at the end. But because of that, where you can do the same thing for
Right.
other creators that was done for you in the early stages. And we've come to learn that a lot of creators that are on Superhive, they don't have a business background or a marketing background, and they are relying on us as the marketplace to create that exposure for them. So, trying to find
Hmm.
different ways that we can do that, and I think working with affiliates is a huge part of that, and
Hmm.
leveraging their already kind of built up trust with their audience and allowing them to try out your tool and see if they love it and share it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, it's definitely a dichotomy now with Blender because it's such a low barrier of entry that anyone can start, building tools, building assets, and things like that. But then it comes to the point, like you're saying, of realizing like, oh, I probably need to understand how business things work or how to actually market my add-on and things like that. And I've taken a few classes in college around software business and marketing or things like that, but it really is kind of a degree of its own for a reason because there's so much to it of how to handle clients and customer support and managing finances and things like that. Like there's just so much to it just in and of itself that
Right.
someone just starting with Blender doesn't really comprehend yet because they're still at that first step of getting into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of work for creators that goes above and beyond just initially building that product and putting it on the market.
Yeah,
Is it-
absolutely.
That's yeah, it's something that not only do creators not really consider, but I think, customers often don't think about that either. It's just like this tool magically appeared and it's just gonna keep working. And it's so amazing.
Exactly.
And all the additional work that goes in the background, which you do this kind of on the side of other work, right? So you're
Hmm.
juggling multiple gigs all at the same time, along with supporting your customer. Tell us a little
I
bit
mean,
about that work
I would
that you do.
say I don't feel like my full-time job's a gig.
That's
So for those who don't know, my full-time job's a pipeline engineer at Dreamworks. So I'm pretty much a programmer for them. I kind of code some of the tools for the artists and the tools used by the developers who code stuff for artists. And basically just like any of the in-between stuff of moving files around or testing new features and tools or things like that. That's kind of what I'm doing, is kind of that in between work. So that's my full time job. So with the products on Superhive, I don't have that pressure of like only relying on that for income. I know there's many creators that are just full time Superhive creators and things like that. And so I very much respect that. And I think that's kind of lent to why I've very much took a relaxed approach in my marketing and business because I don't feel that incentive like they do. That's kind of the roles I'm playing with that.
great. Have you ever been faced with a real challenge through that other work with DreamWorks where someone's like, we need it to do this? And you really had to
But
get creative in problem solving?
a little bit. I mean, I can't get into the specifics of what DreamWorks pretty particular of. They'll knock on my door if I say too much of what they use or don't use. But it's with tools, especially like in a company setting, it's very much of like kind of that perspective between the developers and the users, in this case, the artists, because the artists are very much, it's kind of like, I just need it to do this, like basically trying to simplify the workflow itself. Whereas developers are usually very feature minded of adding this thing and this thing. And to them, it's intuitive just because they see the code of like, yeah, in the code it makes sense. But to the artist, that doesn't make sense because they're looking at a UI and not the code itself. So, and I mean, add-on developers face this a lot of, do I make my own UI with Blender that may be more intuitive, but also may require more maintenance versus keeping it strictly just by Blender's user interface of menus and things like that. But Blender users may complain because they don't like how Blender's menus work or things like that. So it's kind of this this balance of trying to appease as much as you can to the artists of, this will be more intuitive, this is more sensible for how you do your workflow, versus with us of, I want to make sure my job's easy and that there's not as many bugs that I don't have to fix constantly because of how I set it up to make more intuitive. So
Very generous and very intuitive for yourself as well and your
easier said
own.
than done, but absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. I do feel like a lot of the work that you do with Blender, because I'll occasionally see like a quick YouTube tutorial
Mhm.
pop up from you that feels like you just genuinely went, you know what, there's something going on that the community could use just some quick advice on how to do a thing. And then next thing I know, there's a Spencer video just out in the world of like how to make sure that your product is extension ready. Or,
Mhm.
when we had the security issue that was popping up with not only our marketplace, but a bunch of other similar marketplaces. And then there was this, here's how you can protect yourself and make sure that your Blender is secure. And I'm like, thank you, Spencer. That's amazing. So, what inspires you to create those? And can you tell us kind of the backstory?
Yeah, I think in terms of the content creation side, like, I mean, when I was first started making add-ons and stuff, I I very much despised the video making process. Just like any artist knows, of just like having to hear your own voice in the edit and seeing your own face in the edit, like it's hard. And that's one of those things that only gets easier by just continually doing it.
I'm just making you do this today so that you can practice.
I feel fine, thankfully. I can't speak for you, but it's gotten much better. But with the videos, it's kind of I mean, firstly, just like from helping people online, you kind of start seeing those problems recur of like, oh, people don't really understand this thing or do this thing. And instead of telling each person over and over again, having a video kind of helps a lot with that. Excuse me. All right. With like, for example, with the security one, it's like, again, kind of what we had talked about is the kind of the barrier of entry of Blender, that Blender is, it's literally on the floor. Like the standard is literally on the floor with being able to install and use Blender. And that's great. That's the important thing with open source. But it also kind of lends to this of like, a lot of people go into Blender just not knowing how it all works. And they probably don't need to, but there's some cases where I've seen people make add-ons. I'm like, hey, are you going to make it an add-on extension? They're just like, I don't know how to do it, so I'm just not worried about it. And I'm like, it's literally one file. You don't have to do anything. And because for a lot of people, like with add-ons and stuff like that, because it's relatively easy to make them just to start with, you don't think about the advanced stuff of how to make an add-on, an extension, or yeah, how to protect yourself from malicious add-ons or malicious blend files. And so I've been trying to kind of like use those videos just kind of like as a way of, here's these quick things of solving your problems and kind of like trying to help people understand Blender more, as opposed to just like do this thing and that's it. Don't ask questions, trying to be more in the educating side of it as opposed to just how you do this thing and that's it.
Yeah,
Trying to
they
dig a
feel like
little deeper, as the
here's
song
a
is. But
PSA from Spencer Magnusson.
just start every video like that with the PSA
Then end
uh
it with the more you know rainbow. How was your experience working with CG Cookie in creating utility? Because that was definitely a much more long form course scenario. Is that something that you had done previously?
It wasn't, and while I had made several tutorials leading up to it, it was definitely a big learning curve in terms of quality of just like throwing something together and putting it onto YouTube versus with CG Cookie of like, I really need to clean up my audio. Oh, my lighting needs to actually look good if I'm going to be on camera. The first clips that I reviewed with Kent Trammell was the one that reviewed everything. He was great to work with. It took a long time because it was just a matter of just polishing that first video and of like, okay, like here's how you can set up things for recording Blender and your camera and all these things. So it was a lot from a quality perspective of how to get that all set up. And it took several months, which is what happens when you have a toddler and a full-time job. And for some reason, I thought of also trying to upload videos on my YouTube channel in that time. So I don't know why I also did that. But so it took several months when normally if you're just doing a course, like you could probably whip it out in a couple months. I really enjoyed it. It was very much like a kind of a purification process in terms of my content creation and whatnot. But so yeah, it was very new to me, but it helped me a lot in terms of how I make my videos and
And
how to teach as well. There's very much an art to that as well.
I feel like Kent is amazing at that.
But yeah, he is great in teaching and kind of just even just like how he speaks of when he's like introducing something, like there is something to a like a instructor that's just like so calm as they're teaching. um Anyway, makes a world of difference.
And just so pleasant. How
That's true.
is your mini me, by the way? I've seen pictures of tiny Spencer.
She is doing good. She's running around the house. She loves turning off lights currently, so we'll just be watching TV. She'll walk over to the light for the main room light and just turn it off. But she's great, and as with any person with kids will tell you of like being able to see their personality kind of develop and see more of that personality is just so fun. And it's definitely a priority shift in many ways of having a kid. And for me, I think it was it was much needed. I think a little bit for me, but yeah, I've been really loving it.
How do you manage juggling your real time, not gig job, your side work with Superhive, and then the support that goes into that, and your YouTube channel, and everything that you're doing? Like, how do you manage that time?
Mm, maybe manage isn't the word. Doesn't always feel like I'm managing it. Ironically, with the add-ons, I feel like at least with the paid add-ons, I feel like that's the one that seems to take up the least time for me. I'm not someone that adds like a ton of features every month in my add-ons. Usually my updates are pretty sporadic for the most part, apart from just upgrading as Blender gets upgraded. And over time, especially like with like NView, that add-on's been around for so many years that for the most part the code is pretty maintainable at this point. So it's just like, oh, a few lines of code to add. That's it. It's gotten a lot more maintainable, especially with testing and things like that. But yeah, full-time job and family is a lot of that. Always trying to prioritize those. With the content creating, the editing, I actually do like the editing. That's something I've been very comfortable with. But the hard part is the sitting down, rehearsing for a video. This is me live. This isn't rehearsed. But for most of my videos, I've done it at least 3 or 4 times over just to make sure it's comfortable in my head and then I'm saying it right and things like that. So that's usually the part that often takes the most time, is just preparing to make that video and getting in the right headspace for it, and everything. But yeah, I'm very much someone of just like, for 1 or 2 days, like, okay, I'm just going to do the video really quick for this weekend. And then the next few days, maybe I'll do the add-on stuff, or, I'm kind of very much sporadic in a way of like, it's not like I'm just doing an add-on for like an entire month. It's kind of just like for a day or a couple hours, just like, oh, I'll jump and do this. I'll get this done. Oh, I'll get this thing done. I'll get this. So at least for me, that's kind of how I'm managing it.
Reach for a bucket anytime you have a spare minute. What do I have? Which bucket is most full? Which one in
Let me fill this one.
love right now?
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
something that, the idea of rehearsing and editing, like again, the concept of the amount of effort and time that goes into these things that to
Mm,
us as an audience, like I just see your video and I just assume, yeah, he just filmed that real
mm.
quick and put it up there. Without really the consideration of the research that went into it, the scripting, the practice, the setup, the edit, that it actually does take a considerable amount of time. And you were doing that while recording a course for CG Cookie and working your full time job and managing Superhive. So kudos to you and
Thank
PSAs
you.
all around. Can you tell us about? I know NView's been around for 5 years now, I think. And then you have the newer one, which,
Proxy Plus, I
yeah,
think. Yeah.
yeah. Can you tell us about those and what they do and why you built them?
Yeah. So with NView, for those who don't know, it's a scene optimization add-on that basically allows you to interact with your scene and select and hide objects based on their visibility from the camera. So you can handle things just as simple as just if it's within the camera frame, keep it visible, or even things like handling like occlusion or indirect visibility, like from lights and things like that. That one first started from, let's see, there was someone that was asking me about optimizing their ArchViz demo that they had. It was like they had a camera going through the house and then they had it going up the stairs, and they're like, well, I want to be able to just hide everything downstairs because I don't need that anymore. And so like just render the stuff upstairs and save a little bit of time with Blender. And I think they wanted to animate collections, which you can't do in Blender. You still can't. The So I was like, well, you might be able to do this with Python. Like, hold on. Like, that's kind of how a lot of add-ons start is that you hear a problem and you're like, well, that shouldn't be that hard. And then you spend, 3 weeks trying to, code a solution. That was very much how it was with NView, is I kind of just extrapolated that problem into something that it wasn't. And with NView, it also kind of sparked kind of my understanding and research of how Blender worked and how Blender optimized things or didn't optimize things. Because that's kind of the age old beginner rant against Blender, is that it's not fast enough, it's not optimized enough. And I really took time of like, well, how does Blender optimize things? From a coding standpoint, like as a coder, optimization is kind of one of the easiest things to look into because behavior doesn't change. You don't have to get a UI person to see if it's intuitive enough. You just make something faster. Um, and so InView kind of sparked a lot of that, of understanding of how Blender worked under the hood and how to make things faster, how Blender wants you to make things faster, like what settings Blender wants you to use to make things faster and not just, hacking something underneath the hood. And so that was kind of the spark with NView. Proxy Plus was kind of the result of those findings with NView. I feel like that's going to tell people to not buy NView now. They're both still useful, but Proxy Plus is kind of the realization of the importance of proxies within 3D graphics, because that's things that are used at studios and in just indie animation as well, of being able to have your 3D view in Blender not necessarily match what's in the render. And to a lot of beginners, especially those that are familiar with like Unreal and things like that, they're like, why would my viewport ever be not what's going to be rendered? But the important thing is, of my computer can't always handle what's being rendered when I try to play it back in the viewport at 60 frames per second, right? Like the render is offline because it's going to take forever and use all of my computer. So I don't want to do that all the time. And so Proxy Plus was kind of just to streamline a few part of that process of generating proxies, be for rigged characters or just, simple props, just making a quick decimation of the object and things like that. So it's kind of just Proxy Plus kind of feels more like just a few utilities as opposed to NView that's kind of meant to be kind of a bigger bigger add-on of operating on your scene. But Proxy Plus was kind of meant to be more of like, because of what I learned about Blender, this is the more supported way to try to optimize your scenes and things like
I love it. I love it. That's great.
that. Mhm.
So you can get both.
You can still use both. And as part of that, I'll just say of like the common thing of asked about my add-ons and just in general with rants about Blender not being fast enough is of doing real-time culling and things like that. Like that's kind of the big features with Unreal Engine recently with Nanite and things like that of like, well, it can do all this. It can have these big meshes and lights and all these things. Why can't Blender just do that? Firstly, Unreal's a game engine. It can do things quite differently as opposed to an offline render engine like Blender. And with how add-ons are set up with Blender, how Blender encourages add-ons to be designed, having something be real time or constantly updating is just not practical. And so with InView and Proxy Plus, they're kind of meant to be baking that optimization in a little bit, as opposed to just trying to dynamically update as you need it that people expect from something like Unreal.
They get to play with Blender's new game when I was in Amsterdam on their studio touring
Oh,
Dogma
fun.
game. And something about me is I'm terrible at video games, like really, really bad. I can't jump Mario over a thing. I will always fall off the cliff. I just can't do it. But I was able to complete Dog Walk. I was very proud of
Oh, good.
myself. What are your thoughts about the work that they're doing on the game engine and how that's going to come out after they kind of yanked it for a while and now they're looking at it again with things like Dog Walk?
Yeah, and I mean, with Dogwalk is more of making sure Blender works well with game engines like Godot, because yeah, they had ripped out the Blender game engine a long time ago, and I think part of it is that because they're so focused on animations and short films that they just never really considered the workflow for game designers and developers of how to make exports more intuitive and things like that. And so I think it was a necessary refocus a little bit of, okay, we've kind of neglected the users that are using it just for games and making sure that that process at least intuitive enough for them. And Blender's been kind of doing that little by little over the years of they hired people specifically around UI and the user experience, and that's been kind of the root of a lot of their UI improvements over the past couple of years is that. And so with the game stuff as well, I think that's gonna allow it to be not just a film focused 3D graphics but software, but also for games and other things as well. So
Welcoming the game designers back in the door. Come back. Come join us.
we missed you.
We missed you. That's awesome. Yeah. Is there anything else that you're excited in 5.0 that you think is going to make a big difference in your work?
Trying to think of the ones I've seen. I know there's geometry node presets, I think is something they're planning to add of so that way people don't have to figure out the node system as much just to instance a bunch of objects on a
Less mapping.
landscape.
The less
They can
mapping
kind of
you do, the better.
just get started with that. I know they have some presets for the compositor as well of doing different effects, which will also be very nice for a lot of people. I'm trying to think with what else. There was for scripted cameras as well. So with I think it's specific to cycles, but it's that instead of just having a generic 3D camera, you can actually script it to be closer to something out of a real lens, for instance. So you can get kind of a natural chromatic aberration and defocus or what have you just by scripting the camera as opposed to just using the built-in one. Though that'll be really fun. I think a lot of that got inspired from the Lens Sim add-on that debuted on Superhive not too long ago. So I'm really excited about that kind of becoming a main thing as well.
Sim keeps coming up because it was just such a brilliant add-on that had a lot of
Yeah,
big people behind it before it ever hit the market at all. And
absolutely.
so it's definitely the biggest success story of last year for a
Hmm.
Superhive Creator and a brand new one at that. So maybe we'll get
Hmm.
him on and get to hear more about how that developed. Because it
Sure,
kind of
that would be
sounded like
fun.
it was a little bit of I just started doing something and then it just became a much bigger thing. And so I dedicated more time to it.
That's fair. That tends to be the same story for add-on end product developers of just like, yeah, I was just doing this thing and then I kind of went into a rabbit hole with it for a year. that's kind of that's kind of how it ends up being for a lot of
Love
products.
it. Well, since we have broached the topic of other Superhive Creator products, do you have some that you use regularly in any of your work with Blender and that you would suggest?
That's a good question. The ones that I use probably the most currently is Render Raw. I mean, that's been brought up in my videos before. Just really love the interface of it and be able to have compositing just be a matter of sliders and things like that. Another one, kind of a smaller product, Node Minimap. It's it's similar to how Nuke kind of creates a little mini map of your node tree, so that way you can quickly navigate to things. And this person made a Blender version of that. And as someone that had used Nuke for a while in a past job, I really love it. In terms of past ones that I use, that's kind of on occasion, Launch Control, which is for rigging cars. I really like that one. I've used it for my short film from forever ago. Physics Dropper. It's kind of like a simplified version of simulating rigid bodies and even cloth, I believe, as well. Really like that one. And then an older one, I actually don't know if this one's still maintained, so maybe check on that. It's Animated Render Border. So it's that you can render part of your image, but you can have it move over time. And so I use that a lot for VFX when I was in college, of being able to not render everything, because with some of the short films they decided to render it K or 8K on their cameras, and so I didn't want to do a full K render of
Makes sense.
everything, and so using that, it's a lot simpler.
That's smart.
So those are the ones I have used. Other add-ons I haven't used, but I've loved being able to follow is the Chaos Explosions add-on for a while back, and then the paint filters that Tradigital has made, kind of the geometry node based painterly uh, node setups in Blender. I've always thought those are so intuitive. But yeah, so those are the main ones that I've followed as of late. I
That's
know that's a
great.
lot of them, so you can pick which ones to than that.
I mean, when you consider how many products are on the market these days, that's not that
That's
many.
true.
And it can be really hard to find the right product for the thing that you are looking to achieve, especially if there are several different products that do virtually the same thing. Like, which one is actually, like you said, is it still supported? It,
Yeah, exactly.
so we try to make that clear on obviously on the Superhive on the product page, like what's the latest Blender version, and encourage the creators to be active in their reviews and commenting so that they know the creator's still there and caring about their customers. But yeah, regardless, it can be when you're just looking at little thumbnails, pretty overwhelming to say, all right, what should I actually use that would be most effective, and most worth investing in, really. And I
Hmm.
think sometimes people even, you know, invest in specific creators. And I feel like you get some of that. I feel like Mark Kingsnorth gets some of that, where they just become creators that they trust. And so they want to
Mm,
use their products because they know it's going to be good at what it does, it's going to be valuable, and that the person behind it is someone that they can count on. I think that goes a long way as well.
thank you.
Yeah. So is there anything else that, like, dropping final words of wisdom or brilliant thoughts or a quick Spencer PSA that should go out in this, in this conversation?
In terms of like things I am working on, the two that I'm currently looking at is exploring NView as geometry nodes. Geometry nodes has kind of been a next step for a lot of add-ons that are around meshes and trying to make it kind of more built into Blender a little bit. So that is something that I'm looking into currently. Another one of the with my add-ons is it's called Default Cube, the game. It's kind of not a game. I'm trying to that feels the most sensible to me, but basically it's the when you delete the cube, it haunts you in revenge. So that's the
You're
premise
really
of
good
it.
at this game, Spencer. I need this game.
So I've been kind of testing it as like a Coven add-on for live streamers to add more chaos, to their streams and recordings and things like that. That's kind
How
of
do
what
you
I've been
not
looking
have
into
this
right now.
success during this recording right now? We need it. We need it. It's
I thought
October.
about it. Uh, but yeah, I am in the process of doing testing and stuff. But yeah, I'm hoping to release that this month at some point.
Do you bring in people to help you test products?
Usually not actually. Recently I've been trying to have at least at least one or two other people look at it and kind of validate things. With this one, I kind of realized of that I'm not a live streamer. It's kind of I'm not really I'm not my target audience. And so that was kind of when I realized like I should get some actual testing. And that's a common fallacy with add-on developers, in my opinion, is thinking that they are the target audience for their add-ons and therefore they're the perfect testers and quality assurance for it, when it's good to have at least one other person validate things.
There it is. There's that great nugget of
Yeah. Oh,
wisdom
there you
right
go.
there. Because also you get so deep into it on your own where you can't really see a lot of the other
Mhm.
things that someone else from the outside looking at it for the first time would see. And it's just
Yeah,
really
and
eyes.
sometimes the concerns that like your customers have, that's not always the root cause of it. Like for example, with InView, I actually have two versions of the product because of the drastic changes of that. The first version, the UI was kind of atrocious, I would say, of like it was literally just a ton of buttons and settings just filling these panels to the side. And I would get questions all the time of like, I don't know how to use this. Like, could you do a video tutorial, things like that? And I made video tutorials, but then I realized like a couple years later, like, who designed this UI? Who made it look like this? And so that's what inspired the one of the versions of InView of basically just completely scrapped and redid the user interface. And that actually resulted in a lot less customer support messages, I think, just from that, because I'm trying to make it more intuitive with Blender. Those panels are basically just buttons at this point. Like there's like nothing else. And so basically trying to simplify those things and yeah, like getting the user perspective, like what would a customer think when they first open this?
100%.
That was a big lesson from
And
that.
yeah, when you wait until the product is live and you're relying on customers to give that feedback, then you're just throwing yourself into the fire of a lot of customer support and
Mm,
also at risk of poor reviews of an actually good product
yeah.
that just maybe wasn't quite ready for its target audience. So,
Right. Yeah, there's definitely it's definitely a hard question of when to release something, because I do think it's valuable to sometimes get it out a little early to kind of get that initial feedback from customers and things like that. And if you can get like beta testers from like if you have a Patreon or something like that's even better. I do worry when people kind of like they put off the add-on release for too long because they're like, I want to make it just perfect day one of release. And it's like, you're going to be updating it in a month anyway. Like let let the customers decide if it's like if what you have initially is good enough, and then from there steer the feedback and pivot to what makes more sense for them.
that's a really good point. Or you could be working on it forever. It's just like an artist in a painting. You have to know when to put the brush down and
Right.
stick it up on the wall. For sure. That's another great nugget of wisdom.
Hey you. That's okay.
This has been a great conversation, and thank you for taking time out of your many aspects of life to hang out and chat with us.
Yeah, of
Um,
course.
and we will see you on the marketplace. And will we see you at BCon in Austin?
Yep. Yeah, I've got the tickets already, so I am planning for that.
I thought you did. Fantastic. Just stay healthy, stay safe, and we will see you in Austin.
Definitely.